SIL purposefully spilt coffee on my wedding dress, because her best friend was my husband's ex. When her parents eventually agreed with me, she staged a disappearance to gain attention. Hello, so I recently had a disagreement with my sister-in-law, and as a result, no one in the family speaks to her anymore. So for context, my sister-in-law, whom I'll refer to as Amelia 26F, has never liked me. I, 28F, have been with her brother Andy, 28M, for 4 years now, and she's always loathed my guts because she believes I wrecked her best friend's prospects of marrying her brother. She and her best friend, Emma, 26F, had been inseparable since middle school, and I believe it's because no one else could tolerate them, so they just remained with each other. I know Emma has always had a tremendous crush on Andy, and they even dated for a few years while he was in college. They had an on and off romance, which he discontinued a few months before graduation to focus on his future. Andy has told me multiple times that he had always made it clear to Emma that they were simply not suited, and that at Amelia's request, he had attempted to give their relationship a try, but it had failed. They were simply very different individuals, but for some reason, even after it was made apparent to her that they were incompatible and that he was no longer interested, she continued to wait for him and flirt with him. Andy began living independently after graduating from college and did not return home, so he saw less of both Amelia and Emma over time. After his relationship with Emma ended, he did not date anyone for a couple of years because he wanted to focus on his work, but she took that as a sign that he was still interested in her and continued to try to talk to him, even though he would only make small talk and ignore her if she tried to talk about their relationship. After a few years of working, he finally began dating again, which crushed Emma's heart, and Amelia chastised him because, in her perspective, there was no one more ideal for her brother than her best friend. It didn't matter what Andy desired, she just kept imposing her views on him, and even battled with him over it multiple times. Finally, he met me through a few of pals, and we began going out together. He presented me to his family a few months after we met, and Amelia had already determined that she would never like me. She didn't care what kind of person I was or whether I was a good fit for her brother. All she knew was that I wasn't Emma, which was enough for her to despise me. The first time we met, her behavior around me was strange, and when I inquired about it, Andy explained everything to me. So after that, I didn't expect her to be good to me, and I didn't try to befriend her. I've also met Emma several times over our relationship since. Like me, she's considered a member of the family because she's been Amelia's best friend for so long. Both of them are incredibly catty when they are together, and Emma even makes a point of giving us dirty glances whenever she sees me with Andy. But it didn't matter to me since I knew he was happy with me, and that was all I cared about. So for the last 4 years, we've solely ignored the two of them. And recently, even after we were engaged, Amelia was the only person who did not congratulate us, but we still invited her to the wedding since we did not want to start a family dispute. Also, because she is the family's beloved daughter and has always been pampered as a princess, it was natural for her to be spoilt and entitled, acting all bratty like that. And we mainly overlooked her behavior because it didn't affect us personally. Besides, my in-laws had literally asked me on more than one occasion to overlook everything, her behavior towards me and her friendship with Emma, and still invite her to the wedding because they would hate for this to become a big deal. And they told me that she was just being immature, so for their sake we decided to invite her because, unlike their daughter, they had always been nice to me. And Andy and I didn't see the harm in at least inviting her to placate his parents, because we were very certain that given the circumstances, she would decline our request because she would prefer to stand with Emma. But to our amazement, she accepted and even contacted us to thank us for inviting her, explaining that she was finally coming around to accepting me and the family because she couldn't help Emma's sadness and wanted to worry about her own family. Of course, her reaction to being invited wasn't ideal because she had mentioned Emma several times, but it was a start, so Andy and I were delighted with how things worked out. My in-laws were also pleased that things were improving with their children, but our joy was short-lived since, on the day of the wedding, she did something really unacceptable. So, about an hour before the ceremony was set to begin, I was getting my makeup done and was already dressed in my wedding dress. My bridesmaids, mother-in-law, mom, and Amelia were all seated in my room. Basically, all of my female friends and family were in the same place. Amelia eventually offered me an iced coffee, and I obliged without hesitation. She approached me with the cup, and as she handed it to me, she quickly flipped her wrist, and the front of my garment was covered with coffee and ice. The lower half of my dress had been spared for the most part, with only a few droplets here and there, but my bodice had received the brunt of the damage. Everyone was obviously shocked, and as soon as it happened, I stood up and began attempting to pull it all out of me, but even I realized it was hopeless. Amelia began apologizing excessively to me, but I could see the smirk on her face, no matter how hard she tried to cover it. I knew her apologies were for show, and before I knew it, I was yelling at her, because I had completely lost my cool. I was visibly distraught and began crying after a while, but happily, everyone else came to my rescue, removed the dress from me, and, as we still had an hour till the ceremony, they decided to take it to the laundry room and try to perform some damage control. I just kept sobbing in my room, even as they tried to take the dress off of me, hoping that the stains would not be visible during the ceremony and that the hotel personnel would be able to assist me. Only my mother-in-law, my mother, and Amelia remained in the room, and she repeatedly apologized. But I could see from her tone of speech that she didn't really mean it and was enjoying the show. I had asked her to go several times after the incident, yelling at her. But she refused and sat in my room. Despite everything she had done, she had the arrogance to continue to sit in my room and watch me cry after what she had done, which made me even more unhappy, and I couldn't even express it since I was sobbing so hard. But thankfully, at that point, my mother-in-law spoke up for me. And I guess that's when Amelia realized she was in trouble, because even her own mother was not with her, and having the status of the darling daughter was not going to save her from the consequences of her actions. After my bridesmaids had left the room with the dress, and my mother had been sitting by my side to console me, my mother-in-law eventually spoke out and asked her daughter whether she had intentionally spilt the coffee on me. Amelia tried to deny it, but I quickly called her bluff, and I told her that I had been sitting still and had witnessed her intentionally flip her wrist. She then began to argue with me, but my mother-in-law told her to shut up and said that given the circumstances, she thought it would be best if Amelia left because it was clear that she was unhappy with the wedding, and so far my mother-in-law had tried to keep things calm, but it was clear that Amelia was not going to let that happen. She explained that despite her behavior, she had expressly requested that I invite her to the wedding so that she could act like an adult for once and be happy for her brother. But she had been a fool to expect that from someone as spoilt, entitled, and bratty as Amelia, and she had no one else to blame for how she had turned out since they had made the error of constantly trying to be kind with her instead of just being brutally honest with her. However, with what had just happened, my mother-in-law could no longer take her daughter's side in good conscience and requested Amelia to leave the room, warning her not to attend the wedding or she would have security remove her out. I was upset, but even I was taken aback by the way my mother-in-law spoke to Amelia, and I literally stopped crying to see what was going on since I don't believe Amelia had ever been spoken to like this before. Of course, it shocked her as well, but she recovered fast and began arguing with her mother. She tried to make it sound like I was the victim and that the coffee incident was an accident, but everyone in the room, including my makeup artists, could confirm that she had spilt it on purpose. Amelia began to blame me, but my mother-in-law made it clear that she had been invited in the first place as a favor to my in-laws because they had requested her so that there would be no family drama. And now she had changed her mind and wanted Amelia to leave because if it hadn't been for my in-laws, she would not have been invited in the first place. After some bickering, Amelia finally got up and left the room, and my mother-in-law began apologizing to me for everything that had happened thus far, telling me that it had been her error to even try to persuade me to bring Amelia, especially given that she was a complete brat who would go to any length to get her way. I didn't say much in response. I was just relieved that Amelia had essentially exposed herself, and that the one people who had always been on her side, her parents, were now turning against her due to her nasty behavior. After that, all we could do was wait and watch, and I crossed my fingers that the garment would be in pristine shape when it was returned to me. I even spoke with Andy over the phone because we weren't supposed to see each other. I told him everything that had transpired, and he assured me that Amelia would not be present at the ceremony or any other activities. He also informed me that he would have all of the guests wait for me to arrive, and that I didn't have to worry about time. I could take as long as I needed because he knew how important it was for me to have the right attire. And he kept his word. The ceremony started around 45 minutes late because I needed to get my makeup fixed because I was crying so much. But by the time I arrived, my dress had been washed and steamed. Thanks to my bridesmaids and the hotel staff, who took this like a laundry emergency and treated the dress as swiftly and carefully as they could, there was no evidence of coffee on it when I got it back. Everything proceeded smoothly after that, and happily. Amelia was nowhere to be seen. If I'm being honest, I had forgotten she was even there by the time we started dancing, and by the end of the night, I was so happy to be married to Andy that nothing else mattered. My in-laws approached me and Andy again, and this time my father-in-law told me that he was deeply sorry for whatever Amelia had done, and that if he had any knowledge that this was going to happen, he would never have made me feel the need to invite her in the first place. They also informed me that they had decided to cut her off until she apologized to both of us. And true to their word, they haven't spoken to Amelia since the wedding last week. But for some reason, Amelia has decided to make this my problem, and she is getting on my last nerve, trying to talk to me about it all and get me to handle it for her. Most of her texts have stated that I am attempting to replace her in the family, but I will never be able to do so since I am simply not as good as her, and she appears to be well aware that I am attempting to brainwash her family against her. I've already done it to Andy, and now I'm attempting to do it to her parents. But I won't be able to succeed since she knows her family will come back to her, and she has even admitted that the coffee incident was not an accident, but was done on purpose. She even stated that she regrets not being able to get more of it on my dress, which would have completely ruined it and prevented me from getting married. For the record, I've disabled her social media accounts and phone number, so she's been texting me from bogus identities and burner phones to get on my nerves. Initially, I ignored it since I didn't think it was serious enough to address with anyone other than Andy. And he gave me the same advice: ignore her since she only wants a reaction from me, and I don't have to play into her hands. However, 2 days ago, I don't know what came over me. I decided to unblock her after she tried to text me from a funny profile again, and I called her up to speak with her and put an end to this madness for good. She ignored my call the first few times, but eventually picked up, and I put her on blast. I cursed her out, telling her that she, like Emma, was a loser, which is why they were great for each other, and that they should just marry instead of ruining other people's weddings. I also informed her that I wasn't attempting to steal her place in the family since she wasn't worth replacing, and she thought the opposite. Actually, I was not bad enough to replace someone like her. I told her that everyone would be better off without her, especially her brother and parents, who had always treated her as a burden and an embarrassment. I told her to quit harassing me, and then I hung up. I haven't received any messages since, but Emma has reached out to me and informed me that she did so after that phone call. Amelia had a complete meltdown and has been missing since then. So I'd propose making my sister-in-law go missing after she attempted to disrupt my wedding. So by Amelia going Mia, I meant that. She hasn't returned any phone calls or texts since I put her on blast the other day. She and Emma have been living together since the wedding. Previously, she had been staying with her parents. After the wedding, she was kicked out of the house and moved in with Emma. From what I understand, following that phone call, she closed herself in her room, cried for hours, and refused to allow him talk to her or even enter. When Emma awoke the next morning, she discovered that Amelia had vanished, leaving most of her belongings behind. She had tried contacting her numerous times, but had received no response, and their other friends had also attempted to phone or text her, but she had been ignoring them. Emma believes that the only way she will respond to anyone is if her parents or Andy contact her, which is unlikely. Do not get me wrong. Andy and his parents are not being callous right now, they are simply being realistic, since we know she is alive and uninjured. And that is a large part of why we don't want to contact her or give her any attention, because we know this is merely a publicity gimmick, and we feel horrible for being nasty to her. How do we know that for sure? It's because when her parents found out she hadn't been responding to her pals or anything, they decided to contact a couple of their family members to find out where she was. Apparently, this isn't the first time she's pulled off a scam like this. Even in high school and college, she would frequently go missing for a few days before reappearing after her parents were ill and began calling relatives. She typically did these things to attract attention after fights, hoping that her parents would give in and let her have her way. She would even emotionally manipulate her relatives, or whoever's place she was living at, into remaining silent and not telling her parents. They usually fell for it because she was so persuasive. Eventually, the same thing would happen. Her parents would become concerned and call their relatives to find out where she was. Once they found out where she was, those relatives would scold her parents for not treating her well. And she would eventually return to the house and have an emotional reconciliation with her family, after which she would always get whatever she had wanted in the first place and fought for with her parents. It was incredibly manipulated and twisted, but that is exactly how Amelia works, so I am not shocked. In truth, it was my in-laws who had encouraged me not to worry or feel guilty about Amelia's disappearance, and had informed me of her previous misbehavior. This time she had shown up at her aunt's house, duped her aunt into believing that her parents had asked her to leave her brother's wedding for no apparent reason, and then kicked her out, because apparently I had been brainwashing them into turning against her while she had done nothing. I'm not sure about her, but attempting to destroy someone's wedding dress on purpose just a few hours before the ceremony sounds like a good enough reason to be banned out of the wedding in my opinion. And I don't see why she's claiming that I'm attempting to turn her family against her. She's not even that important to me. Anyway, after speaking with her aunt, her parents discovered that she had been staying with them, and Amelia had informed her aunt that she did not want them to know since she simply wanted some time and space away from her family to heal from this. But we knew exactly what she wanted. She merely wanted to scare her family into believing she had gone missing, so they would contact her and she would get her way once more. That's why she entirely ignored the coffee incident while discussing what happened at the wedding with her aunt, making it appear as if she was the victim. So naturally, when her parents phoned her aunt, she began reprimanding them for mistreating Amelia and causing her such distress, but my mother-in-law instantly informed her sister the truth and removed any confusion. They also discussed how she had been performing the same attention-seeking actions since she was a teenager, and it was becoming old. Her parents told her aunt that now that she knew the truth, she could do anything she pleased, and she was also kicked out of her aunt's house. Her aunt has told her mother that she has asked her to go without explaining why. Emma, however, is unaware of this and has continued to text me, telling me that I must resolve this matter before it is too late. I'm very convinced she's attempting to scare me into believing that something bad has happened to Amelia, and that they're both playing the long game, but they have no idea we know what they're doing. It's her own fault that she's so predictable, but it's unfortunate that an adult lady feels the need to do things like this for attention. I believe it would be much easier and more acceptable for her to simply admit her mistake and move on. Update 2. Hello, it has been a while since my last update and I am currently on my honeymoon. It's only day 3 of our honeymoon, and I'm already entertained by what's going on back home. As you may recall from the previous update, Amelia had been living with her aunt. But after learning the truth about what transpired at my in-laws' wedding, she chose to kick Amelia out. But Emma was still trying to persuade me that it was all my fault and that Amelia was lost. I started ignoring them, but I didn't block him because I wanted to see if she had any other plans for her life. And sure enough, once Amelia was kicked out by her aunt and returned to live with Emma, she continued to try to trick me into believing that Amelia was still gone. She continued texting me about how many days it had been since Amelia had left, and how heartless we were for not attempting to contact her yet. So Andy and I decided to tease her by asking her if she was so concerned that she should file a missing persons report, because Amelia had departed quite a few days ago. The two of them were so ignorant that they hadn't even considered this option. And after we sent that message, they didn't say anything to us for a few days until we departed for our honeymoon. Today we learnt that Amelia had finally arrived at her parents' house and demanded that they apologize to her since she was not ready to have a relationship with them. She had undoubtedly expected them to be scared and apologize to her, but my in-laws simply told her that they were not interested in communicating with her until she apologized to me and Andy. They also told her that her entitled attitude was no longer acceptable to them, and she could turn them off at any time. They weren't even going to question it. That's when she began having a temper tantrum at their door, which my in-laws did not even tolerate. They phoned the cops right away and had her removed from the premises. She ran away kicking and screaming, and I must admit, they are being fairly severe with her, and I believe this had to happen at some time. We're just glad Andy and I aren't at home right now, so she can't annoy us even if she wants to. Update 3. Hello. So we've returned from our honeymoon, and Andy and I had a wonderful time. So we were not looking forward to returning to the turmoil that was going on back home. Honestly, we just want to keep away from it all. We don't even need her apologies anymore. But in any case, I suppose Amelia couldn't risk her parents being angry with her for too long. So she chose to apologize to us. She sent us both an email, apologizing for everything and explaining that she was only trying to be a good friend to Emma because she truly believed Andy and Emma were meant for each other. I'm not sure why she believed that. He had made it clear from the start that he didn't envision a future with her. In actuality, their on and off relationship was due to their incompatibility, and he repeated breaking up with her, while she guilt-tripped him into returning to her. And I don't think it was anybody else's fault that Emma was obsessed with him. If she was a decent friend, she would have helped Emma move on rather than hurting her brother's chances of finding someone he liked. Anyway, that's how she handled the matter, and she apologized in the email. But just because she apologized doesn't mean I have to forgive her, which Andy agrees with. So we did not call her, but we did contact our in-laws and informed them that we had gotten the apology. But we were still hesitant to forgive her since we needed time to understand everything. It was simply not acceptable given what had occurred at the wedding and even later. My in-laws were very understanding, and they even told us that they were keeping their distance from Amelia at the moment, while she stayed with Emma. To be honest, it doesn't matter if she meant her apology or not because the harm has already been done, and it will take a long time for us to reconcile with her. And if she truly wants us to forgive her, she must demonstrate that she is truly sorry, that she did not simply say things in that email for the sake of saying them in order to avoid her parents' wrath. But if she doesn't want to have a relationship with us in the future, that's fine too. Honestly, we don't care. We are just delighted to have each other, and that is all that counts to us. We just want to enjoy our lives without worrying about family turmoil, so we're staying out of it.